One thing that really bothers me is the perception that the sustainable version of a product is just an inferior and sometimes slightly more expensive version of the regular thing. This is a phenomenon that was actually demonstrated in a study by Brian Nursey published in the Journal of Advertising. To put it simply, they made people choose between two identically described cleaning products with the exact same price. The only difference was that one of them had a label that said 100% eco-friendly on it. While lots of the participants would even comment things like, oh, it's so cool and important that this brand cares about sustainability and things like that, most still chose the conventional version. Why is that? Unfortunately, we do need to admit that this happens for a reason. There are countless examples of sustainable products that are precisely a slightly worsened experience compared to the original. Those brownish recycled sheets of paper that were difficult to read whenever you wrote something with a very thin pen, for example, or the suggestion to take public transportation instead of driving your own car. You can't possibly argue that it's a better experience. But me, personally, I blame the dissolving paper straws that can't support more than 3 sips of my milkshake. We know, however, this isn't necessarily true anymore. But that's not a rational decision people make. It's a gut feeling. It's emotional. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to change an already made emotional decision by dumping rational facts on top of it. The same thing happens to healthy products, by the way. There's this really interesting story of a snack company that found a way of creating the exact same cookie with the exact same flavor, consistency, everything, but with half the calories of the original. It's one of those magic cases of extremely advanced food technology that I simply don't understand but can't help but admire and feel grateful for. After all, I love cookies, and now I can eat twice as much. However, when they decided to advertise it on the label, they were surprised by sales plummeting, which makes no sense at all. It's the same cookie. It tastes as good as always, but it's just not as bad for your health. But when asked, people said they missed the older formula. That's why they decided not to buy it anymore, which seems ridiculous. Why would someone miss the extra calories? At that point, someone came up with an even crazier suggestion. Don't change back the formula, simply remove the low-calorie label and stop advertising about the low-calorie content. Sales jumped back to normal, and there were even reports of clients saying, "We're glad the original cookie is back." This is all to show that emotional perception is extremely powerful, and if people have a gut feeling about something, it's very difficult to change their minds using facts alone. But the good news is, we don't have to. Just because people don't like sustainable products doesn't mean people don't like sustainable products. It's just a matter of perception, and what I'm exploring today is the array of products that are extremely advanced and much more sustainable today, and actually are better than their polluting predecessors. And for that, I want to start by asking, how many years does it take to change a light bulb? Really, do you remember when was the last time you had to replace a light bulb in your house? We know that bulbs are incredibly efficient today, generating way more light for a fraction of the electricity. You also have much more control over their colors, intensity, etc. And I remember from my childhood that we actually had a pretty significant section of a cabinet with many spare bulbs, and that picking up the staircase to switch one was a somewhat common thing to do. I would do that at least once a month. I realized that I hadn't done this in a while when I moved to a new apartment and the owner of the old place asked if I wanted to take the light bulbs, which I had purchased. I hadn't really thought of it, and it amazed me because I stayed in that apartment for about 2 years and I don't remember ever changing them. In addition to that, they also used up to 75% less energy, produced much less heat, which is a blessing, especially during summers in Brazil, and it even allows me to very intricately adjust how much yellow or white I want them to be. Another astonishing example that we can't leave out is cars. Yes, I understand they are far from being the net zero example, but if you ever get stuck in traffic behind an older car with no catalytic converter, you'll instantly know how far we've come. And as soon as it moves, you'll be able to actually see again. We can talk about electric cars and how they're technically better in almost every way: instant torque, less noise, less complicated parts, meaning less maintenance. But we don't even have to go that far. Internal combustion engines today are incredibly superior and way more sustainable than their predecessors. But advertising modern cars as sustainable would immediately raise concerns for the average buyer. Does it mean that the car is less powerful or less exciting? Is the interior not so comfortable? What did you have to give in exchange for making it eco-friendly? But as it turns out, a more sustainable car can actually be exciting even for hardcore old school racing fans. You see, that's solely a communication problem, not a product problem. You can't lead the way saying, this is a race car we've been doing for years, but in order to make it sustainable, we've decreased the size of the engine, modified the exhaust system, and redesigned the suspension. We're also compensating the remaining carbon footprint, so there's a slight increase in price, but it's for a good reason. I don't think I know many gearheads that would go for that. But if you say something along the lines of, we've created a new 1.6-liter 3-cylinder turbo hybrid engine that powered Sebastian Ogier's car for his 8th World Rally Championship title. Its new hybrid system guarantees astonishing torque and acceleration while using only about 7.6 liters of fuel for every 100 kilometers. That means less time looking for gas stations and more time enjoying your new car. Just so you have an idea of how much sustainable cars are today, if you were to drive the road version of the World Rally Championship winning car from 2010, that's less than 20 years ago, the Citroën C4, you will do up to 21 miles per gallon, in contrast to 33 miles per gallon on average of the road version for the 2025 champion, the Toyota GR Yaris. And that's just 15 years apart. If you go even further and compare it to cars in the 80s, it would be a miracle if they would be able to get up to 18 miles a gallon. The next product I'd like to talk about is computers, and this is a tricky one, so bear with me. Computers today are amazing when it comes to energy efficiency. In 2005, a regular laptop would consume up to 90 watts of energy under heavy processing load. And that processing speed is probably slower than the chip in my microwave. Today, some computers' energy consumption can be as low as 10 watts and exponentially faster processing speeds. Even though they consume much less energy, it's pretty obvious that today's computers are much superior than the ones that we had in the past. Even though we all have that nostalgia for Windows XP, using a computer for 2005 daily is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, and that's the tricky part. I wouldn't mind driving a 2005 car or living in a 1960s house, but I would think twice about using a 10-year-old computer. I would be worried if it was 15 years old, and I would definitely not rely on a computer that's older than that. The issue of the tech industry isn't the carbon footprint of using its product, it's the carbon footprint of producing them. And that only increases as more things need to be connected, more computers need to be added to daily activities and eventually replaced every 5 to 10 years because they're already outdated. Besides, the process of producing a modern chip is so complex that the production of one laptop today usually has a higher carbon footprint than producing one in 2005. The dictionary defines sustainable as able to be maintained or continued over a period of time. That means that everything is sustainable to some extent, even for a short period of time. Computers are usually sustainable for 5, perhaps 10 years. Cars for 20, maybe 30, if you take care of them. A house is sustainable for decades, sometimes even centuries. And maybe that's the best selling point of what we can call sustainability today. When my great-grandfather arrived in Brazil, he bought himself a musical instrument which I still use today, over 100 years later. How many family homes were maintained for generations and will be maintained for even more generations to come? In a world where everything changes so fast, sustainability doesn't have to mean slightly worse product for a slightly higher price. Sustainability truly means quality, security, stability, something your children can use, something that lasts. Thank you for joining us today. The Green Earth Podcast is a Green Earth initiative. Green Earth is a large-scale nature-based project developer, and our goal is to help nature flourish and prosper. If you want to read more about our projects, please check our website, green.earth. The link is also in the description. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us a review. And if you know anyone that might benefit from this content, we'd greatly appreciate your recommendation. I'm Pedro Zimmer, your host, and I hope to see you for the next episode of the Green Earth Podcast.